What's wrong with Daddy?
He got sick.
Yeah, sick of your ish, Ginger. Wolfman is the latest feature from Saw scribe Lee Winnell. It follows Blake, played by Christopher Abbott, and his family who are attacked by an unseen animal and, in a desperate escape, barricade themselves inside a farmhouse as the creature prowls the perimeter. As the night stretches on, however, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable that soon jeopardizes his wife and daughter. Does this fresh take on the Universal classic monster movie deliver, or does it end up being a man-wolf abomination? Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. I got to see Wolfman early during a little screening last night, thank you for having me, and I have a lot of spoiler-free thoughts to get into today. So let's start this review sandwich with a slice of something positive. The packed theater I saw this in, filled with reviewers and friends alike, seemed to be really digging every twist and turn. Trust me, there are a few of those. I was really feeding off of that energy, especially the guy next to me who jumped multiple times during some classic Blumhouse scare sequences that are abundant in this one. Don't get too excited, jump scare fans, you've seen most of them in the trailers. I will say though, there's one that really got me that I didn't see coming, because it wasn't in the trailers, damn it. Besides a seemingly positive reception, Wolfman is strangely inconsistent and has pretty poor pacing. Getting into the meat here, Wolfman was described as a new take on the original classic, inspired by body horror-centric films such as The Fly and The Thing. Cronenberg's reimagining of The Fly particularly relies on goopy practical effects, a fatal romance, and a tragic villain as its prime focal point. It's my favorite horror film of all time, especially for that last point there. Something similar is attempted here, and sometimes it works. There's a moment with the daughter Ginger about 3/4 of the way through that nearly brought me to tears. Besides a few heartfelt sequences, there's a lot of stuff in this film emotionally that just did not hit. Where the jump scares and action sequences aided the story of Winnell's last feature, The Invisible Man, creating tension so thick you could cut it with a knife, it really only detracts from the slow burner this should have been. There's a real lack of focus on building up Christopher Abbott's Blake as a tragic villain, even though the building blocks are there. I needed less of the arbitrary haunted house style jump scares and more time spent on building up Christopher Abbott as this tragic Seth Brundle style character that they were clearly going for here. Going back to something I said earlier, there's a twist in the middle of this movie that works with what they set up in the shockingly subtle opening scene, but it ends up rerouting the emotional core of this film to focus on something else entirely. I definitely don't hate this twist because I think it works really well with a lot of the themes that are prevalent throughout the entire flick, something that is actually consistent about it, but it seems to take away from that The Fly-esque story that they're clearly going for here. In this moment, all I could think about though is that this very simple concept of a film was just trying to do way too much and resulted in a very uneven product. I do want to note, however, the rest of my theater did not expect this big twist. Alright, we gotta go back to the positives because I'm starting to sound like a negative Nancy here. I did not hate this film, I actually really liked it. The cinematography, for instance, is gorgeous. Winnell's use of the gimbal in both Upgrade and Invisible Man is now a staple of his style. The way a movie is shot can be a unique story all on its own, and Lee fully understands that. I love the location for this one too. It's supposed to be set in rural Oregon, but that's played by beautiful New Zealand here. I really want to go to New Zealand one day, but there are just way too many creepy crawlies running around, man. Besides the typical Blumhouse scare sequences you've certainly seen in the trailers at this point, there's a really subtle and eerie scene with a spider that is so unorthodox. The sound design in this sequence makes a spider crawling through a closet seem bigger than the Wolfman. I may be very alone in this boat, but that might be one of the scariest sequences in this entire film. It's a very unique way to push the plot forward too. And again, going back to cinematography for a second here, it's shot so well. Like, it feels like the spider is right in my damn face when I'm watching this thing. You're gonna want to smash that thing with the palm of your hand until there's just like blood, guts, and spider goo all over you. Speaking of goo though, the blood and gore certainly delivers in this movie, something that I guess I was a little shocked by. I really shouldn't be though, considering this comes from the guy that wrote Saw, and Saw 2 and Saw 3. There's even a really cool reference to the first Saw that is so on the nose, but I loved every second of it. Usually I like to give hints about this kind of thing, but I don't want to spoil the last leg of the movie. I gotta be a negative Nancy one more time here, because besides this inconsistent emotional story, I also don't love the pacing. The first 20-ish minutes of this movie is exposition right until an explosive crash sends this movie into lightning fast pacing. Faster than how I used to talk in these damn videos. I can't believe of all people I'm complaining about this. Zombie from 1979, the movie that's currently on my shirt, is one of my favorite horror films ever, and this is such an in-your-face, super gory, over-the-top, campy zombie movie with a bunch of moments just like this. But I just don't think it works for something like the story they're trying to tell here. If this was a werewolf slasher style movie like Werewolves from last year, then I'd love this high-octane intensity from the get-go, but it doesn't work in the heartstring-pulling family drama this movie is simultaneously trying to be. It ends up really working against this one, unfortunately, at least for me, not building that same sort of high tension that 2020's Invisible Man saw, which I guess I really wanted from this movie. Wolfman uses this visual effect that I want to call WERVISION that I think perfectly encapsulates everything I liked and didn't really like about the movie. As Blake changes into a werewolf, he stops understanding his family. There's a moment where his wife tells him something he's been waiting to hear the entire movie, but to him it sounds like gibberish. It's a really unique way to set up this punch that was set up a little earlier on in the film, and I love it. It's borderline a tearjerker sequence, but then later on in the film, they use this same WERVISION thing from the character's perspective to set up another jump scare, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It's very weird. It's like they were reminding us, hey, this is a Blumhouse movie. Let me grab you by the throat. Blumhouse, baby. It's a really ambitious swing that works sometimes, but they keep using it over and over again with diminishing returns. It really dulls the shine of this film that had the tools to be spectacular had it picked a lane. Regardless of my critiques, Wolfman beats out most of the Blumhouse releases from the 2020s so far. I really can't be too hard on this one stacked up against something like Imaginary. Wolfman is a masterpiece compared to that film that literally took the same third act from Insidious 5 from the year before. Why, Chauncey? Why?
Chauncey says you're not allowed to play with us.
I've been hard on this Wolfman, who is probably like 52% wolf, 48% man. But let me be a contrarian for a second and praise that design. The creature design for this film was heavily criticized after sort of debuting at Universal Studios, where some dude was pouncing around at guests in what looked like a cheap Spirit Halloween costume. I have so many questions for the Blumhouse marketing team, and this is all of them. I think the design is getting an unreasonable amount of hate because this is all a lot of people are familiar with. Some of you have been lucky enough to avoid the marketing for this film that spoiled nearly everything about it. But I think it works really well with the story at hand here, uneven or not. Kudos to the SFX and VFX teams here. I also think Christopher Abbott's performance as Blake alone is worth your time seeing this one in the theaters. He plays a complex character that carries some heavy themes with him throughout the entire film. I can't say that about most of the movies that have come out from this same studio recently.
Maybe my happy place can be our happy place?
I've been dogging on Blumhouse for some time now, but honestly, with their last couple of movies, it seems like this is a big turning point for the studio. I don't think Wolfman was like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but it is definitely better than Night Swim, dude. I will take 100 more Wolfmans over a haunted pool movie that somehow is about baseball. What? I still recommend seeing Wolfman in the theaters this weekend, warts and all. Not all of it works, but some of it really does. Those little moments of magic show me that even in one of his weakest features, Leigh Whannell can still prove he's a master of horror. Hey everybody, before we wrap this bad boy up, I just wanted to thank you all for 29,000 subscribers. That is insane. We are less than 1,000 away from 30K. So please consider subscribing to this spooky channel if you haven't already. Thank you to everyone who supports this page in any sort of way. Are you excited for Wolfman? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Please consider subscribing, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.